We're making sure that we're not obligated to the inmate, that we're not dependent on the inmate. But that's why we're put in this position. We have to be better than them. Because if we don't respect ourselves, we can't expect the public to. How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gandy, host of Tier Talk, and today we're going to discuss some of the changes that are being made at the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections to battle the drug overdoses. I believe these changes are great ideas. I know some people think that it's reactionary at this point because of how many staff already has been exposed at how many different facilities, but at least we're getting some actions into play, and I believe that these actions should be looked at by other state facilities, by other jails, county jails, whatever it is. Let's get it out there because there's some good changes here that are happening that I feel highlight very preventive measures that can be used not just in PA, but elsewhere. So when we get back from our sponsors, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the changes that the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections is making to battle their drug overdoses. So guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you guys, you brave men and women that work that front line. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. I stand by for our sponsors.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Thank you guys for listening to our sponsors. Even though the Pennsylvania prisons are locked down, we still had a scare at SCI Benner the other day. Officer was separating socks, white powder right in their face. Officer immediately could not respond to their name. Scary situation. You know, the question is, the steps that PA DOC is now taking, a lot of people look at it as reactive. It is. You know, you had 29 officers or staff members taken out at 10 different facilities. Why do we wait so long? But I will say something right now. The steps that they're doing, they are great steps. You can tell that these steps were thought out. I believe these steps are great because these steps are both preventive and consequential, which means that these inmates or these family or whatever, whoever decides to bring in drugs into these facilities are facing some zero tolerance measures that should have always been utilized, in my opinion. There are some steps that they're doing right now that I felt should have always been done, but there are some new steps that I feel that are pretty great, and I think that other states, especially Ohio, Arkansas, they need to look into these steps because these steps are really needed. It really deals with how to adjust after what's happening. Obviously, we know the immediate lockdown is needed. They'll start easing it through, you know, slowly start introducing things back. But in the meantime, the lockdown is great because it gives us a chance to take a look at everything, reevaluate what's going on, and then make sure we have a well thought out plan. And it gives us a chance to concentrate on what's needed instead of worrying about, you know, other threats that could possibly happen. You lock it down, neutralize everything, and start again. So some of the concerns that they mentioned was definitely the mailroom. That's a great way for drugs to traffic into a facility. So I like that centralized mail. I don't know how burdensome that's going to be to get that done, but I'm sure they thought that through. I'm curious to see how that's going to work because I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for other facilities or other states to do the same. But again, all the mail is going to go to a centralized area in which that area is going to be well protected. Officers are going to be well geared, and they're going to go through the mail and make sure everything's safe before they send it to whatever institution the mail is going to get to. And remember, people are going to argue about the length, how long it takes for them to get that mail. So we're hoping that mail can get there within the next day. Again, not to rush security measures, but that would be one of the arguments when people go against what this step is. So the faster you can get the mail there, the better. But again, you still got to go through all the security measures. So there is going to be an adjustment period at first, but eventually they're going to try to get the mail the next day. So it doesn't really hinder anything. It gets the mail going and gets the mail where it needs to be in the right amount of time. So I think that's great. Centralized area, protective gear, great move. I'd like to see more states utilize that. The drones. Drones is the next step of introducing contraband into a facility. And I would love for us to be ahead of that step. I believe in South Carolina had put some nets up. PA's thinking about getting some more equipment that can detect drones in the area, which I think is great, especially when you have those open yards and stuff could be just dropped into the yards. And again, the yards are active. Inmates are in these yards. So people will just control drones, drop some items into the yard. Very hard to detect, very hard to get, because once that drops in the yard, inmates pick it up, they can pass it across or hide it. So it gets very hard to detect. So I like the fact that we're trying to be preventive by getting equipment that can detect the drones and also hold people responsible. Find out the owner of those drones. Find out who's flying that in and do whatever you can to make sure you find that person that's responsible for bringing or making an attempt to bring that contraband into the facility. Again, that's where the zero tolerance comes in. And I believe that PA is making a good effort to show that they're zero tolerant. I thought this was a great idea, since we have the introduction of digital stuff into our facilities like the JPEGs and whatnot. I do like the digital book idea. I like that. I like the fact that, hey, you know what? You want to play games? Now we'll make everything digital. Again, that's controlled. Some places will actually, and again, I'm okay with this too, have an approved source of sale. So that's the only vendor that you can go to get whatever it is that you're looking for. So same thing with books. These are the approved source of sales for books. This is where you can go purchase the books. So that's another good avenue they can take. But I do like the fact that, hey, you know what? We got these digital JPEGs. We got these kiosks. We got these tablets. We got ways that they can download these books in digital format. So we'll offer them the books that they need through this digital format, or bolster the library. So basically invest more money into the library, get some more books. So either way, that's a great way to stop contraband, because contraband, like Suboxone, can get soaked in the pages of the books. So it's a great way to control that avenue. As for visitors, we all know that drugs could be passed through the visit hall. So it's great to see that we're going to put some consequences on the visitors for trying to smuggle drugs into a correctional facility. So it's great to see that if a visitor is caught doing that once, they are banned for life. Zero tolerance. And I would like to see, for once, people hold true to that. There can be no exceptions, because once there's an exception, everybody's going to use that exception as an excuse to try to get themselves out of the ban. Also, for inmates who are caught with drugs and utilizing the visit hall to get those drugs, they're going to be given at first a 6-month ban, a year ban, and then a permanent ban. You're banned. The last one, you're banned from having visits for life. Now, that's very hard to maintain, but we have to do it. There's going to be pressure from the outside, so do not fold on that. That is a great consequence that will hopefully deter, nothing stops, deter the inmates from deciding to use their family, again, banning the family member from life, or getting caught themselves. And again, we have to make sure that we follow through with that last ban, which is the ban for life. That is a ban that we have to follow through with. No excuses, no exceptions. So again, for PA to say that they're doing that, we need to make sure that that stays in place. That final life ban on visits is very hard to implement, because a lot of people get worried about the outside pressure. But I think it's justified. It's justified for that lifetime ban. So again, I'm very curious to see what happens when that inmate gets that third strike. If they're going to implement that lifetime ban, and what does it really mean? I'm very curious about that. I want to make sure that they stick to that, because that is a great way to control something coming into the facility through the visitor hall, because now you're getting the visitor as well as the inmate who's trying to employ the visitor to smuggle in contraband. But other than that, I mean, this is just real quick. I think these are great steps forward. I think they're showing some levels of zero tolerance, which is needed, some very good preventive measures to protect staff. But again, we have to be worried about what's already in the facility. SCI Benner, the sock, the white powder, there's stuff still in this facility. So we have to still have measures to keep those facilities still locked down and do some extensive searching. You know, make sure that we do what we can to try to eliminate what's in the building already. And I also want to mention something else that they touched on during this conference that they had, or when they interviewed the governor as well as the commissioner. One of the cool things is that when you start putting pressure on known sources to smuggle in contraband, it's going to start showing other avenues that inmates may take. Other avenues that are not so popular, not so known. So I think this is a great way to understand and see how those other avenues are employed, and maybe hopefully share that knowledge with other correctional facilities, because in desperation these inmates are going to try to employ other avenues, and they're going to get sloppy, and we're going to discover those other avenues. And for the ACLU, I know they're going to put pressure and they're going to want more transparency. It doesn't work that way. These are measures that have to be taken, controlled measures, but they cannot be put out there like that. They can't, because we're trying to make sure that we control the issue, and sometimes that means that we can't let the public know everything at first. You just can't do that, because the more we get out there, the more inmates will be able to circumvent what we're doing. So I know you're asking for transparency, but transparency conflicts at this point with safety and security. We have measures in play, but sometimes these measures can't be let out to the public because of safety and security concerns. And I think that's common sense. I think that's literally is common sense 101. Common sense 101. If we let you know the routes that we're taking, especially the routes that we don't want the inmates to know, then they're going to figure out how to go around that. They're going to circumvent, because they're able to do that. They think all days on ways to get around the system, on ways to circumvent the rules. So at this point, I think it's great that the transparency is limited, and the steps that they're taking, I know it comes off as being reactive, but I think it's a great step forward, and I think that these are steps that can be utilized elsewhere. So at this point in time, I like what I'm reading. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Please, if you haven't, subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe, guys.